So Rich, I guess that's interesting name for a unicorn to to have become, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations on that, man.
Thank you.
At Crossover, actually, we were using your solution, so I'm looking forward to find more insights from how you structured your business to grow that fast and that good. We don't have. I love that panel. You know, I mean, this screen. Whenever it doesn't show any questions for my guest, I'm so thrilled. You know, I have.
Cool.
I just have all the time for myself, right?
Okay.
How did you do it? How did you came up with it? You filled the void, and you like really filled it. You grew substantially on it.
I think so. I joined Intercom about 4 years ago, and the company had started 7 years ago. And where the idea came from is the founders of the company had worked together for a bunch of different startups, and all of the time they were hanging around a particular coffee shop, and they loved the coffee shop so much because the owner was able to really get to know them, build a relationship with them, and they found they were super loyal to him and were inclined to buy more and more things from him. And they thought this loyalty, personal relationships with customers, if we could figure out how to do that at scale, that would be a fantastic thing. And that's actually where the idea for the business came from. As I said, I joined about 3 years into the business, and I had come from like Amazon and Facebook, and I was the first like professional manager who was hired into the company, and I thought I was going to teach the company mature business practices and all that type of stuff. And the thing that I was like astounded by was like how mature and ruthlessly impact orientated all of the business processes were in the company. And in fact, even though I'd come from Amazon and Facebook, I just had to be a student, like, and learn and figure out everything that they did. And some of the most interesting things for me, which are still super strong today, is all of the roadmaps and all of the strategy and everything that we have. It's never around doing something; it's around solving a problem. So all of our roadmaps, and we absolutely follow the jobs to be done kind of like framework and mentality of product management. So all of the teams will have a top 5 roadmap, and it will all be a list of customer-orientated problems with measures for success. And nothing is, we're going to build this new feature. It's like, no, we're actually going to help customers solve this problem. And so that was this kind of like real problem-orientated, like just problem-orientated focus and like customer-orientated focus. That was actually the first thing that was super interesting for me. And then the second thing was just how fast everything moved. Like when I joined 4 years ago, we were shipping code to production 100 times a day. I had come from Facebook where we were shipping twice. So even then, we were shipping 100 times a day, fully automated, push on green, end-to-end deploy times were about 10 minutes at the time. And I had come from Facebook where they deployed code to production twice a day, and it took about 100 people to actually deploy code. Everybody had to show up on IRC, acknowledge their change. It had to be manually tested, and a bunch of engineers were like just doing a bunch of magic in the background. And the fact that and it took about 2 hours, and half the time it failed. And so I just couldn't get over this kind of like just speed of deployment, speed of thought, speed of iteration. That was just like magic to me. So I think like those were like the and I think even over the 4 years, those things we've like really doubled down on solving problems from first principles and just staying super fast.
How do you avoid outages with that velocity in deployment?
So we think that the safest change is the smallest possible one. So that's part of the way we avoid the outages is by shipping so frequently with such small changes, so that it's actually really easy to, well, it's as easy as possible to understand the full impact of the change. Although we have very fast rollout, we also have super fast rollbacks as well. And pretty much everything we deploy goes out behind a feature flag. So even though we are shipping code to production 100 times a day, a lot of the functionality is deployed in dark mode, and then you have a web UI in order to turn on that new functionality for only a tiny fraction of customers. And also, we dog food our own application extensively, so we are usually the ones who discover the bugs or the outages on our own platform first, so that we experience it before our customers do.
So what's your test case coverage for the features you release, so that you can roll them back again, or to make sure that they will not be rolled back, because that's costly?
You know, we don't have metrics for that. It's not something that we emphasize for safer deployments. And in fact, what we actually kind of do the opposite. We try and say, build your things with these specific technologies, because if you do, they are super well instrumented by default, battle hardened, well monitored by default, so you get so much of the operational excellence for free. And because a lot of what we're doing is speculative or experimental, we do kind of follow that path of build an MVP, get it out there, let's see if customers actually like it or find it useful. And if they do, we will then go back and add a bunch of tests and battle harden the software even more.
Okay, we have a question, 2 questions actually. How do you make Intercom an attractive place to work for developers, i.e. win the talent war?
That is a great question. Our VP of engineering and our CTOs are both engineers by trade, and we always say Intercom is of the engineer, for the engineer, and by the engineer. And we talk about at all hands and events about how we are committed to making Intercom a place that engineers like us would actually want to join, no matter where we are in our careers, whether we are a junior engineer or mid-level engineer or senior engineer. So just being honest with that, and like inviting people to tell us what it is we need to do better. We do an engineers forum every 6 months as well. So what this means is like where we get 1 or 2 engineers from every single team in the company, we send them off site for a day, and we ask them to come up with the top 5 problems facing our engineering org right now, and we invite them to tell us what the problems are, almost like a focus group style, like tell us what the problems are and tell us how we will know when we have achieved success. And then we break up into teams and partner with those engineers to come up with programs that help make the environment better. So those are like 2 of the things. One of the other things that we do a lot is we invest a lot in training. So when you come to Intercom, we say, here are our standard technologies. These are the ones we actually want you to use. And so there's a little bit of restricted freedom in that. But to complement that, we say, we want to help you be really expert in these technologies. And we have a budget of about €2,000 per engineer per year in training. And we organize a lot of really good training. Like we have Elasticsearch core developers fly over to Dublin for a week and set up a class where we can actually go deep on Elasticsearch. We have a bunch of Aurora people come into us as well. We have like Ruby on Rails core contributors come into us. So engineers love to learn, and so between being committed to listen to them and then committing to help them grow, those are like the 2 most important things for us.
I would add, how do you attract people from abroad? How many branches do you have? Are you located only in UK?
No, so we have our main engineering office, our biggest engineering and product office is in Dublin. And then we have an office in San Francisco, which is growing fast. And we have probably our second biggest office is in London. And it's funny, engineers feel like the engineers are not the bottleneck. We're able to get great engineers pretty much all over the world. Designers and PMs, like really feel like they're the bottleneck.
They became that recently, yeah.
Yeah, so much so that I went back to college this year to learn the fundamentals of UX design, because I think the more kind of design skills and instincts and awareness you have, just the better and faster you can enable your company to run.
I used to work for Neil Patel, if you know the guy, online marketing, whatever. So I managed his product, two of his products for like 2 years. And he told me that he actually pays for an engineer up to $200 per hour, and for a designer up to $400 an hour. It's crazy. I mean,
designers are like
shifting in the market.
Designers are the bottlenecks. So we have a ratio of 1 engineering manager, 1 PM, 1 designer, and 5 engineers, and that's kind of our ratio. So for every 1 designer you have, you can put 5 engineers to work.
Okay. What is your battle plan when a copycat comes along that builds on your idea and actually improves on it? Should be an easy one.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool when people like I use that kind of analogy. I do think there is space for more than 1 great company in a market. So even in cloud computing, you have Azure, Google, and AWS. In mobile
Alibaba,
phones,
recently.
Yeah, you have like iOS and Android. So competition is fantastic. It spurs you on to do your best work. Somebody said you always run your best race when you have somebody following close behind you. We try to be competitor aware but customer focused. So it's like, obviously we keep an eye on the industry, and occasionally we can be inspired by what other people are doing, but our product strategy is like goes on for 20 years. So if you see, so we aren't short of ideas, but when you see somebody else doing their own thing super well in the market, it really kind of spurs you on to go hire more engineers, designers, and build out your own strategy even faster.
Okay, and maybe prototyping very fast, as you mentioned that you're doing, that certainly can help, right?
Yep.
To retain that market share. What was the key channel for your successful large market gain? By the way, how much of the market share do you own?
I actually don't know how big the market share is. I know that we have about 20,000 paying customers and many more free customers on top of that. I think we're one of the biggest. I think I'm not 100% sure. I think we have like so many kind of distribution channels. I think the powered by Intercom. So in our messenger, there is a little tagline at the bottom, powered by. So when our customers use our product, it gets exposed on the internet basically for free. And if you have that little powered by Intercom link that people can click on and go, oh, I like this thing, I'll click and see where it came from. That's certainly one. Our blog has been like a super powerful distribution channel for us as well. A lot of who we sell to is small startups. And so we spend a lot of time creating like really real authentic content and blogging and speaking about it, trying to help those other startups do the type of things we're looking to do. And I think our blog and our events have definitely been super valuable channels for us as well.
I can see a pretty interesting question. How do I identify if there's too much overhead? How do you deal with it?
That's a great question. So it's interesting for me. I've had like various different strategies for this. We work to like quarterly strategy, quarterly goals, 6 weekly cycles, and then kind of weekly sprints. And so on a week by week basis, I would look at all of the tasks on the sprint board and go, how many of these are related to like our strategic roadmap, and how many of these are related to just running the business? And I would like total that up every single week, just really, really lightweight, eyeballing all of the different items and go, that's new business, that's old business, new business, old business. And I would just kind of keep running totals of that and look and go, hey, that's 50-50. That feels that feels expensive. It feels like 50% of our precious engineering resources, even though we're in startup mode trying to win our market. That's too expensive. And then I would like categorize those things and go, what are all the things we're doing to run the business? We seem to be doing a ton of Elasticsearch upgrades. Okay, we need to automate that. We need to eradicate it. How can we do it? Do we need to get in a bunch of training? Who's the do we need to spin up a team that can like just squash this work? Other things I would do in kind of a lower level is at stand-up every day. So it's one thing on a week-to-week planned level, seeing what the overhead is in your Scrum board, but just on a day-to-day level, I would just ask everybody, hey, what did you do yesterday that wasn't planned? And they would tell me, oh, I like dealt with a walk-up from some other team who needed help doing this, or this other team hadn't told us they were going to do X, and we needed to like go talk to them and help them do it. And I would just write these things down in a spreadsheet. So how long did that take? 20 minutes, an hour, whatever. And I would just write these things down in a spreadsheet. And then at the end of the week, I'd do like really crude categorization. Oh, this is like helping the delivery team. This is like dealing with an outage. And I would create a rolling pivot table of this, like week by week by week. And then like every 3 or 4 weeks, I'd just go to the teams and go, hey, and what I would also do, I would count how much of their time was spent doing unscheduled work. And I'd be able to say, hey, for the trailing 5 weeks, you've had effectively 80% usable time, and 20% of your time has been spent doing like unplanned, run the business stuff. And here is the Pareto analysis of the top 5 things in those categories. And some of it is like human related. Hey, we all need to get better at planning. This team needs to talk to this team on a Thursday rather than on a Friday, because if you talk to them on a Friday, they've already made their plans and it's too late. Or it could be that team over there seems like they are dealing with way too many outages, and they need to figure out what's up with their quality process. So there's no real tools to it. It's just discipline, pen, paper, an Excel spreadsheet.
Management work.
Yeah, but it's like super powerful and super valuable.
Don't you believe that weekly sprints are too fatiguing, too exhaustful?
You know,
I mean, Agile gives us space 1 week to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I have experimented myself, several takes.
Yeah.
My conclusion is like 2 weeks should be the optimum.
Yeah.
1 week usually is like risky. What's your take on that?
You know, I would have said the same. And when I was at Amazon, I experimented between like all of the different time frames, and I found that you know, like you, probably like 10 to 12 business days was like the optimal amount of time. But because the deployment system is so fast, and because there's so few impediments to building, you actually can get real MVPs. Like you can actually build real product in a week, and there's just something beautiful of having, when you have so many teams trying to work together, they all have these synchronized schedules, and the whole kind of scrum of scrums things works really well for us. Like the main planning cycle, like the main strategic planning cycle for us is like on a quarterly basis, and then we will break down that work into 2 6-week increments. So the weekly planning on a Friday is you know, takes an hour. You know, it's kind of really lightweight, and the kind of heavier weight planning kind of happens on that 6 weekly cycle or 12-week cycle.
Okay. Speaking of overhead, have you ever encountered situations where you had to advocate for changes in heavy processes that were deemed too expensive to change?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably love to try out 2-week sprints, to be honest with you, and just see. It's like there are some things.
Asking, man.
Just asking. There are like some things that are. We focus a lot on having synchronized processes and like really good interfaces between teams. So the quarterly strategy, 6 weekly goals, weekly sprints. so much of what we do, like so much of this process is actually an interface for teams to interact really well and consistently and predictably with each other in a timely manner. So it's kind of hard if you want to innovate or try to change one of those interfaces, because you kind of really need buy-in right from the very top to get all teams to experiment with this one change for a couple of weeks. But I find like the power of the like pen and paper and the spreadsheet and the little like hand done analytics and graphs are usually the most powerful thing to help you kind of influence at that level and make those changes.
Actually, this brings me to a question I've been meaning to ask you earlier. How do you strategize on building the team so that you can serve so many purposes, like iterate fast, have weekly sprints with products delivered? How do you strategize on that? What's the drive behind building a team in Intercom?
Yeah, that's actually it's a great question, and it's really hard. And for us, it probably changes every 3 to 6 months. Like our organizational, because when we're growing so fast, our new products are springing up. Things are more successful than others. We need to hire more designers than we can get in Dublin, and we've got to go to, and we have to go to London. It's like, it's not far off chaos at times, you know. It's like it's just changing so much. But I think the guiding star is like you have the company mission, you have your strategic goals for a year, you have a bunch of programs which are your winning strategies for how you're going to do that. Key initiatives come out of that. Initiatives are themed, and then you can actually start to build groups and then sets of teams around that. And so the place that we've evolved to now is we kind of have 3 organizations inside of R&D, where we have our product organization, which own the things that customers pay for. And then we have our platform group, which are all of the individual components that are stitched together in order to make up each of those products. And then we have our foundations group, which are the ones that build kind of our internal technology platform, and that's the group which I lead. But at this stage, you know, we're hiring like 8 to 9 people a month right now, which is like a new team every month. And so when you're just spinning up a new team every month, it's you're kind of making it up as you go along, and then 6 months go by and you've added in enough teams that the old organization structure doesn't work, and you can have an offsite and you kind of restack and plan out for the next 6 months and hope it's going to work and do it all over again. But it is kind of one of the more fun things about working in a fast-growing startup is there's so many new people, so many new teams. Things are kind of changing so fast that it gives you it's like an accelerated learning course in organizational design and organizational health.
Mm-hmm. So you do have visibility like 1 year from now in terms of business and product?
Yeah, so we'll generally have, for the key initiatives in the company, we'll have like our top 10 key initiatives that we want to do for the coming year, and we'll have executive ownership or sponsorship for each of those key initiatives, and we'll have a winning strategy document which will lay out, here is the strategy that we are going to follow in order to win this initiative, and here are all of the individual projects or programs or individual problems we feel that we need to solve from it. And that's generally looking kind of 1 to 2 years out.
How fast do you iterate on initiatives? Like, when do you know somebody had an idea, like let's focus on this, but again, let's talk to somebody else, filter that, see if it's worth implementing in the product. What's the dynamics of the feature iteration process for you?
Like small features will get done in 6 weeks or less. Yeah, the absolute biggest initiatives could take 6 to 9 months, but our process is somebody comes up with a clear idea of a problem we need to solve, and we kind of write this one-page document which we call an intermission, which about 1/3 of the page is, here's the problem we think we need to solve and why, and the last third of it is, here is how we will measure success for once we've solved this problem. And we take that and we agree on the problem definition, and it's the product manager's job to do that. And once we've agreed it's a valuable problem and we think we'll know how to measure it once it's solved, we hand it over to the design and engineering team, and the design and engineering team come up with what we call an interconcept, which is our think big version. Like here is the most fantastic, proud solution for this problem. And then our PM comes back in and gets involved again, and we scope that thing down, and we scope it down to like effectively the minimum viable product. What's the smallest, simplest, fastest thing we can do? We bake it out into like phases. What are the areas of uncertainty here? What are the areas of risk and ambiguity? How can we order our build plan or our rollout plan or our product creation plan in order to generate the data which helps us remove the ambiguity and risk? And then it gets handed back over to our engineering, design and PM team again, who will then...
Speaking of overhead.
Pardon?
Speaking of overhead.
Yeah. Well, all of this stuff happens, like the interconcept will happen, or the intermission will happen could happen in 2 days. And the interconcept could happen in like 5 days. And then the first working version of the thing could happen in a week or 2 weeks then after that. So as a product development cycle, from the time you have a first idea about something to the time something's deployed on your website that people can look at, could be like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you have a structure about faster teams, easier teams, something like that. I've heard this structure before. What is your take on that? How do you what are they supposed to do? What is the impact that those have on your product or per features? So we have our internal developer infrastructure team who are focused on like faster, safer, easier shipping, and for that team, faster, safer, okay.
Yeah, faster, safer, easier shipping. And most of the teams at Intercom consider their customer our paying customers, whereas this team doesn't consider our customers, our external customers, as customers. They consider our engineers as customers. So they are their own product managers. They go out and spend time in each of the individual teams, feel their pain, and they see themselves as force multipliers, as accelerators, almost as brand ambassadors as well, and like really important part of recruiting, because engineers want to work in places where they can build stuff really fast. So the team operates slightly differently in terms of how they manage their backlog and how they do their work, but it's a team that the team has very few like full-time permanent people. Most of the people in the team rotate into the team from the product teams and will come and spend 3 to 6 months in the team and then go back out into one of our product teams. So you're kind of keeping that customer empathy alive within the team.
Okay, let's see. Okay.
So I have a question about integrations. I noticed, like you integrate with Clearbit, and Intercom has always been this company that's super, like, I always felt it gave me this ethical and this like super close to both the companies that it sells services to, but also the end users and so on. And I actually used the live chat once where somebody told me, hey, because of Clearbit, hey, Irina, marketing manager at Hyper. So I wanted to ask, how do you choose which integrations like are in line with the brand, and how do you determine what value the integration will build, and if you're going to do it or not, I guess?
That is a great question. And I think there's actually a bunch of different questions in there. Like one is like how do you pick the integrations that you want to build, and then there's like another really interesting ethical question about like how do you not mess up your user experience by feeling like creepy and big brotherish. And then there's even another one for me, which is like how do you think about like security and privacy and everything like that related on the technology end. And so for me, I used to run the integrations team at one point, and very much the integrations that we build are customer request driven. So we have a fantastic research team who will use Intercom to talk to a bunch of our customers and figure out what are the integrations that our customers feel they need in order to help them more deeply stitch Intercom into their kind of working environment. The Clearbit integration and the like some of the other social media integrations and things like that that we have as well. You know, the idea about making business personal is you want to help people get to know each other as much as possible, and the type of information which is surfaced through Clearbit and a bunch of these other integrations, it's publicly available. It's publicly available information. So if I used Intercom and I turned up and said hi, and if somebody then went and spent like 3 hours researching who I am on the internet, they will be able to come up with like pretty much all of this information. So to a certain extent, what we're doing is with that Clearbit integration, we're like just making it easier for somebody to get to know you super quickly. The things that we don't do, and we probably never will do, is once you give us your email address, we actually know way more about you more likely than Clearbit does, because you know, Rich at Intercom.io is a customer of Spotify, is a customer of Microsoft, is a customer of like all of these other businesses who actually use Intercom. And so if we were really sneaky about it, we could be harvesting all of that information and building our own Clearbit type service, which would be way more deep and powerful than what Clearbit does. But that would be completely unethical. And the only way we could do that is like with completely changing all of our privacy policies that we ask customers to do. And it's not something we are planning on doing. The other interesting thing though, like from the security and privacy stuff, for me GDPR has been incredibly interesting as it's been rolled out, and maybe like we've done a couple of privacy assessments with some leading Irish law firms, and they tell us we're like they tell us we are quite far ahead of the industry in terms of our GDPR rollout and implementation. Pretty much every team at Intercom spent several months not doing forward momentum product development as we figured out and decided how we were going to build GDPR compliant infrastructure that we were super proud of and super happy about, because at the end of the day we ask our customers to give us their most precious resource, which is their customer database, and so they need to like really be able to trust us. A bunch of people have asked about the Clearbit integration, I think in particular, is one that you can turn on and off. There is like one other social profile enrichment feature that we have as well that again people have the ability to turn it off, so that it's not something that you have to have in the product if you don't want. If you don't feel like you like it, you can totally turn it off, and in the back end we will then go delete all that data that we have kind of taken in on your behalf, so that you don't have to worry about basically whatever you want to see, you are going to see it, and if you don't want to see it, we're going to delete it and make sure nobody else ever gets to see the stuff that you learned specifically about your customers.
Hi Rich, thank you for being here. We as a business actually have a long history with Intercom. I think we've been around 5-6 years, I don't know exactly.
Wow.
So I've seen the growth from the ground up, which makes this a pretty interesting conversation from my perspective. It used to start with customer service on demand almost, half an hour at max, in which we would receive a reply if we had some type of concern. Over time we've seen that change a little bit. Let me make a side note there that I read your article, which by the way is very coherent, well structured, resembling of a COO, CEO, rather than the head of engineering, and kudos for that.
Thank you.
In it, you clarify that minimizing the amount of apps or the reliance that the business would have on all these different services could be kept to a minimum, right? Mm-hmm. Intercom was always the full-fledged first Titan that came out that had a lot of innovative features that were then kind of dissected and budgeted and made into economic versions by people that ripped it off. Would you agree? A lot of innovation has gone, you know, to people that try to grab a piece of the Intercom pie even though really the true creation is beautiful in its essence. So I find that how that's grown over the time and how you've kept the attention on intelligence in terms of the blog, guiding our customer service into trying, or the smiley faces, for example, which, by the way, are way too expensive to be integrating into like the rating system of the smiley faces. But then at one point there's a bit of a trauma here because we made a 1 year upfront deal, because we were paying anything between $3,000 and $4,000 a month, which, by the way, does that make us a small-sized customer, a medium-sized, or a large-sized customer?
Medium to large.
Medium to large. So as we made that upfront payment for a full year, we actually noticed that everything dropped. Our delivery rates dropped. There was no attention to the IPs and checking like, hey, your deliverables are really low. That only happened when we started complaining. All of a sudden our account shut down, and then they said, okay, now we're reviewing your delivery rates. But that was already late because we had to notice it ourselves first before Intercom would interject. So my question would be, as you have grown, do you feel that there's just a clear, which is obvious, it happens to anyone. We're still a customer, we're still friends. But do you notice that as you grow and scale up, that it becomes very difficult to inject certain amounts of energy into all the regions that deserve it? Because right now, we find ourselves in contrary to what your article says, where we try to minimize the amount of apps by having Intercom being the all-seeing eye when it comes to customer service needs, and Intel, I must say, because you obviously have the analytics of the players and all the people that interact with your product. But now we have to integrate Mixpanel as well, for example. They go more in depth. What happens on the first day, second day? How do they interact with your website? There's a new realm, a second layer, and we find ourselves having to adopt a second product that we know could be inside of Intercom, but that's not there. Do you feel that you're slowly but surely losing a bit of a grip when it comes to expanding in all areas, as the upside potential could possibly be?
Yeah, I think those are some fantastic comments and questions, and I think you're right on so many levels. Like the Intercom, when I think about the iPhone, doesn't have the best camera in the world, doesn't have the best email client in the world, but its USP is that all of the different apps it has are just good enough for what you need in your daily life, and it's small and lightweight, and you can easily carry it around with you. And so much of what I think about Intercom's USP is very similar, is that we try to be well-designed, intuitive to use, easy to use, fast, small, powerful, and able to give small to medium businesses pretty much everything that they need in one small app. And the world is like, sees that and likes it, but then other people go, actually, we're going to build the Nikon digital SLR version of the camera, and some people will actually want the cooler, faster part of that. But so far, we still feel like for our target market, for those small to medium-sized startups who seem to be most successful on the Intercom platform, that our one tool to rule them all strategy seems to be working a lot, and that the power of connectivity between all of those different applications works. But you're right, there's like many different people who are like just picking verticals of that, like very, very thin focused verticals of that, and like moving really, really fast and going really deep, really quickly, and some of those people are doing really well. And like our challenge is to not get too far behind, and to be really well connected into all of those different applications, and slowly but surely raise the average bar for us. Some of the things you talked about, like deliverability and things like that there. So from my perspective, if anything, when you move from a monthly subscription to an annual subscription, you get more focused, because when a customer support person or a salesperson comes and says, hey, we need help for this customer, and they mention that you're like an annual subscription, it's like, well, we absolutely really need to pay a lot of attention to this. These people have made a commitment to us. We need to pay back on it. I think like one of the constant challenges that we have is when you're growing so fast, deliverability like is definitely a key challenge. I think like one of the challenges I constantly face and struggle is how to prioritize across an org of like 100 to now coming up to 120, 130 engineers. What's the right balance between sustaining and maintaining our existing infrastructure and keeping the product that we have today super healthy and super like operationally excellent versus how do we keep building the new features and new product and new capabilities that our existing loyal customers have, and they're telling us, hey, your product's great, but I needed to do X, Y, and Z. And hey, I look at, like, I really don't want to use Mixpanel. I'd love to just have everything done at Intercom, but in order to do that, I need you to build X, Y, and Z. And like for me, that's like the hardest trade-off is, hey, we've got 2 new engineers starting on Monday. Where do I put them? Do I go get them to go build new data analytics capabilities, or do I get them to go work on better automated spam detection and deliverability for our existing customers? And if anybody can figure out the perfect solution and decision-making framework for how to do that, they're like way smarter than me. That's the thing I feel, you know, when we talk about those like quarterly roadmap cycles and then 6 weekly goals, like those are the types of conversations we have all of the time. And yeah, it's hard. I'll bet you. I mean, I feel like we get it wrong all the time. Like I can always look back at every decision, and usually with hindsight, I can go, you know what, we went too hard on this one, or too hard on the other side. But yeah, it's hard.
Any other questions? No? So, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.